am calling the March 10th, 2025 meeting of the Arlington Finance Committee to order. Tonight, we will start off with a presentation from Minuteman. I will ask our guests to introduce themselves in a minute. Just to give you the plan for tonight. We'll spend however much time we need or want with Minuteman, and then we'll catch up on some minutes that we need to approve. And then I want to deal with facilities and DPW. We may not get to it completely tonight, but let's start it and maybe hopefully finish up on Wednesday and anything else that we can fit in. So that's the game plan for tonight. And with that, I will ask our guests to introduce themselves and then just take it away.
All right, great. Now, I didn't get to meet everybody. Would you mind if we just all share too? So my name's Heidi Driscoll. I think I met most of you as you were coming in. Didn't realize there would be so many of you, so I got lost with the handshake. I'm the new superintendent of Minuteman, and I actually think, someone reminded me, it's been about a year since I've been hired, and I started July 1.
Nikki Andre, business manager. Happy to be back and see you all again.
Great. So welcome to town. We're glad to have you as part of the Minuteman family. So Jordan Remy, Precinct 2.
Jennifer Seuss, precincts don't mean much but 3. I don't know if they mean anything to you.
Topher Hyam, Precinct 15.
And Alan Jones. Charlie Koskett, Precinct 10.
Michael Ruderman, Precinct 9, former advisory committee member, former school committee member, and always Minuteman parent.
Dan McKenna, Precinct 21, and congratulations on your new assignment.
Sophie Miazzo, our Precinct 4, welcome.
John Griffin, at large, welcome.
Chuck Carney, Precinct 11.
Grant Gibeon, Precinct 5.
Rebecca Youngkin, Precinct 7, thanks for coming.
Daryl Harmer, Precinct 12.
Annie LaCourte, Precinct 13.
Josh Lobel, Precinct 8.
And I'm Christine Deschler, chair of Met. And I too welcome you. And I'll turn it over to you.
And there's Paul.
Okay.
Yeah, we have another member
Paul,
joining us.
there.
Hi, Paul.
He's sick today.
So we do have a couple slides here to share with you, and I do want to thank you all so much for providing questions ahead of time. That will make it so much easier for us to go through the meeting and allowed us time to prepare specific answers to questions you have. So that was really, really helpful. I also want to say Sarah Montague is on her way, our school committee rep, and she is also on our finance subcommittee for Minuteman. So I'm just happy to be here. Again, I'm surprised this is the largest finance committee we've been in so far.
We are actually larger than this, but most of us are here tonight.
All right. How do you want me to? Oh, how do I just introduced you. Yes.
You said some wonderful things.
How do you want me to let you know to advance the slide? Just
Verbally or?
all right. I'm ready for the next slide.
Okay.
Folks, I may stand from time to time because I just had knee surgery, so sometimes sitting down is
Completely understandable.
a little what to do.
The PowerPoint slide?
Oh, is it flipping through?
Yeah, it's flipping through different documents.
Okay, so.
Here.
Do you want to sit there? Is that easier for you to see what's going on?
It's fine.
Okay.
I don't mind a little.
Do you want me over there so better way?
No, okay, totally fine. Well, you can keep it on this one for now. So the first slide just has a couple pictures of Minuteman behind the numbers we're calling it. It shows a picture of one of our teachers, our football players, some students in an academic classroom, and we want to make sure that, thank you. We want to make sure that you know that our budget reflects our values. The budget is built thoughtfully to make sure that we are operating an efficient and excellent vocational education system within Minuteman, and I think you'll see that our budget does do that. We do want to, next slide please. We want to highlight some Arlington students. A couple of the different towns have invited us to bring students, so maybe in the future, that might be something you'd like us to do. In 2024, we had 36 Arlington graduates who went on to 2 or 4 year colleges, many continuing their study in their fields. 7 students have apprenticeships, which means in their trade, and 6 students are going to post-secondary trade school or have other plans. Some of the colleges that students went to are Drexel University, Maine College of Art, Maine College of Art and Design, Mass Art, UNH, Quinnipiac, Wentworth. Currently, we have 198 students from Arlington representing all of Minuteman's 19 program majors. That means every single program major is accessed by Arlington. In Arlington, we have 18 students out on co-op right now, 13 seniors and 5 juniors. If you don't know what cooperative education is, that means once you have gotten to a particular level of mastery and you found a job in your field during your vocational program, you can go out and make money. You do have a regular job with an employer, but our co-op coordinator and your teacher, of course, supervise. It's like a supervised employment, and they can work outside of that too. It's wildly popular, as you might imagine, and gives students a huge competitive edge when it comes to career in college. We have, we have some athletic achievements we want to call out. For soccer, we have some Junior League All-Stars, Rita and Roman Treadwell. For football, the senior captain and league All-Stars, Sebastian Joseph. And for volleyball, the senior captain and league All-Star is Dylan Pritchett. And now I'm going to hand it over to Nikki, who's going to give you a lot of the gritty details.
Thank you all. So tonight we present to you Arlington's preliminary assessment. The total assessment just shy of $8.5 million, without the school building project, which is excluded from with Prop 2.5, $6.7 million approximately. You can move to the next slide. Overall, our FY26 operating and capital recommendation, approximately $32.5 million, just up 2.99% over FY25. And further breaking that down, we have our operating recommendation, just about $25.5 million, 5.56% increase from FY25. And we'll explain in our budget priority slides a little bit about how that's come to be. Our FY26 operating capital is just about $1.3 million. It's a 21% decrease. And again, we'll kind of discuss that further, but we had an old energy savings lease on our old school building. So that's finally been paid off and off our books, which has allowed that line to come down significantly. And our school building project, we have officially finally closed our MSBA project in August of 2024. We paid off our final temporary debt in our ban with the MSBA reimbursement that we received back. So going forward will just be the debt service payments on the debt the school has. And then bringing down to our total member assessments, 26, just shy of 26.5 million, 2.79% increase over FY25. But as you'll see in future slides, that does shift a little bit depending on the enrollment per school and the 4-year rolling average of each member town. So our budget priorities are our budget drivers. Staffing is obviously a big one. We have a 3% increase built into the collective bargaining agreement, or the CBA, plus steps and levels for our educators. We really took a look at supplies and materials, and happy to do so because we had some concerns about potential tariffs, inflation over past years. We really wanted to make sure that the hands-on learning for the students wouldn't be affected by that. We could still buy all the materials for carpentry, our wood, our, metal, all of that, so they could really still have that hands-on experience as if they were working in the field. Our insurances were a big budget driver. We had some claims on our building insurance and general liability insurance. However, we were able to level fund our health insurance. Last year, we kind of had we had built in an increase in our budget, but our trust fund voted a 0% increase. So this year, it didn't necessarily materialize. So we're able to keep that level funded for this year within the budget, which was great. We did get new bids for transportation. We have a new transportation company starting July 1st, North Suburban Transportation, and that was about a 5% increase year to year. We've also seen an increase in our homeless transportation, our foster care transportation, and special education transportation. So that was considered when we built this budget as well. A big reason for the increase in our operating budget was our increase to our OPEB, our other post-employment benefits, trust fund. So Minuteman actually put a study committee together back in 2021, and they had tried to determine when the best time to start increasing our contribution would be. They determined when the ESCO lease or that energy savings lease fell off the books, that would be the best time to do a one-time increase to our OPEB trust fund to try to be fiscally responsible to our member towns. So, that ESCO lease has fallen off the books. That was about $550,000 this last year. We are increasing our OPEB for $300,000 this one time, and there'll be further details on OPEB in a future slide. We do have capital stabilization fund and other needs around the building. And as promised, we will continue to offset our athletic field debt service with our facility rental revolving account. We can move on to the next slide. Our capital requests, we are proposing $950,000 to our capital stabilization fund, which is a $100,000 increase from the prior year. We do have other capital needs around the building, which is about $153,000. We will talk further, but we did have a long-term capital planning report completed by an outside company, On-Site Insight. So we will certainly within the next year be looking at that and what financial impact that may have to upcoming budgets. Looking forward at our OPEB funding strategy, as I had mentioned, the OPEB study committee had gotten together. You'll see here our trust fund balance 1.7 million, while our unfunded liability to the tune of 22 million. So we are proposing that $300,000 increase this year, with the intention of increasing it 5% each year after that. Often people ask, when I first got here, they were contributing about 50, 60,000, and we've slowly doubled it. But I'm often reminded that when everyone else was starting to make contributions to this fund, Minuteman was still kind of trying to stay a school. Really build the new school that we're at. We went from 16 member towns to our 9 member towns, and this is really a good time to focus on this contribution for the future. So moving forward to our enrollment. We have the blue line, 669 students total at Minuteman. Red line is our member town students, 632. And our green line is our non-member students, 37. So that has remained consistent. We did have students that graduated out of the senior class, but we have the same number of freshmen actually enter. And if we go into the next slide, we can show in further detail the breakout of enrollment by town. So Arlington here, you'll see your senior class has 57, junior class 56, sophomores 42, and freshmen 43. We actually, as of today, got an update. As of March 1st, they offered out some admissions, and we have gotten, of the 69 students that applied, they were all offered admission, 59 accepted and 10 declined. So we would expect, maybe some things change over the summer, but that's a good number for at least preliminary purposes. And moving forward to our preliminary assessments, Arlington does have a decrease in the assessment this year, 1.38% decrease. And, we share with you the 4-year rolling average, because our budget is strongly based on the number of students per each count. So that is a 3.5% increase. You will see, our operating budget is solely based on the 4-year rolling average, while our capital budget is, allocated slightly different. There's also a consideration in the capital budget that each member town pays 1% of the capital budget. And there's a consideration for the combined effort yield, which is the community's ability to pay for education based on household incomes and property values. So while they are comparable, there are certain things that may change the exact percentages. So moving forward, we do have the historical assessment trends just to show the past few years where Arlington has been and where we are today. You can continue on. Wrapping up our budget, these are just comparable numbers. I know percentages, can often get missed. So if anyone's interested in the numbers year to year, that provides it here. Again, with the 2.99% for our total budget increase. We have our non-assessment revenue based on the governor's budget that was released January 22nd. Our tuition and our capital fee from our non-resident, our non-member town students has remained consistent because we did have the same number graduate out in our senior class that entered as our freshman class. We again continue to fund that facilities, use the facility revolving account to offset the athletic field debt, and contribute $650,000 from our E&D fund to offset member town assessments. And just wrapping up, our assessment components, as noted on the budget book. And we can move to the next slide. Thank you. We did have some questions that were submitted, so we will move forward and address the questions. What you'll see here on this slide actually is some artwork from some of the Arlington students. We had one student, Carly Saunders, who has won the Skills USA t-shirt contest for 2 years in a row, as well as some other designs by a student from Arlington, Andy Cassett, and highlighting emerging young artist design, Lika as well, who's a senior from Arlington.
I do want to call out Carly though. So I don't know if any of you are familiar with Skills USA. Maybe some of you might be familiar with DECA or with other organizations that have student competitions. Skills USA years ago used to be called VICA, Vocational Industrial Clubs of America, and students from across the state and then from across the country compete in their trade areas. Those competitions at the national level are sponsored by places like DeWalt, and they give them all sorts of tool ships and wonderful opportunities to start their own businesses and to get off and start off in their trade. And Carly in DVC submitted a t-shirt design that will be worn by every single person who is a part of this in Massachusetts. It's a huge, gigantic, big deal to have all of these hundreds and hundreds of kids across the state wear your t-shirt. So that happened last year. So I have been involved in vocational education since 1990, and I have never heard of someone winning it twice, and she is the first person I'm aware of who actually was picked for the t-shirt design 2 years in a row. So that is a huge feather in Minuteman's cap and absolutely in Carly's. So if you know her, please make sure you tell her that that's incredible. And I'm so happy for her to get to, I hope I get a t-shirt myself. So what we have next is we have a lot of questions, and some of them had several parts. And some of them were not actually questions, they were more like requests for information. So what I'd like to do is read the question, and then I'll share with you our response to it. And I would appreciate it if it's okay with the chair, if you have questions about that particular item, I'd love to do it while we're still on it and not jump back, because there's a lot of questions.
So when we cover a particular question, raise your hand if you have additional questions on that. And when we're through the questions, then we'll open it up to any further additional questions. So you won't lose the opportunity to have another question.
And if you could share your name too with your question, which helps us, then the folks that I do know in the room, it just helps reinforce names and faces. You don't have to list your precinct, although I'm precinct 11.
They do.
They all-
Did they?
I
I won't remember them, but yeah.
That's okay, I have it right here.
So the first question was, or request was, I'm concerned about students transferring from Minuteman to Arlington High School, and particularly concerned about situations where the student is counted as enrolled in Minuteman, yet completes most of the academic year at Arlington High School. So as I'm reading these out of context, I assume that means you're worried that we are getting the payment for a student and then Arlington's educating the child. So I did look at dates of withdrawals that I shared with you on the next slide. Oh, I'll share with you in a second. And do you happen to know for the years since pandemic reopening, how many students have transferred? Yes. How many of these take place during the summer? How many of after October 1? I actually have 4 separate dates that are key for Minuteman on one of the charts for you to see. Have there been any students accepted into Minuteman as of October 1 as replacements? So this year we haven't had replacements. We accepted all students, plus we accepted, as Nikki mentioned, 19 out-of-district students, but we did accept 7 sophomore transfers to fill seats of sophomores this year. Are there any patterns in these transfers? I'm especially interested whether the special education needs are a factor. So I think you may have gotten this ahead. So my first slide, the next slide, shows Arlington withdrawals. So I cannot do just a particular class because there's so few students could be identified. So I have all Arlington withdrawals for grades 9 through 12 for each year since 2020. The light yellow line is the total number of students with special education services. So you'll see students who went to, and they were out of area, or they went to a private school, or they went,
So this is the one, right?
This is the one. That's the one you
Yes.
want, yep.
Yeah.
yes.
Right.
Oh, are mine out of order?
That's okay.
That's
That
okay, it's
is-
fine. No,
sorry
no,
about
no,
that.
we were at the right
That's what I
place.
get for having
No, we
paper.
were in the right place, we just crossed off.
So if you look at that bright yellow line, that is the number of special education students. The blue is the out of area or private homeschool or other. So that means they didn't actually go to Arlington High School. And the yellow are identified as in-state public transfer. So that means out of area is literally out of the state. We don't track them in our student information system or in our state system. The yellow, most likely they came to Arlington, but they're marked as as in-state transfers. So some of them were not. Some of them went to other districts, and those are the totals. Do you have questions about the Arlington withdrawals?
Just in case the RGB colors on your monitors are a little wonky, we've got 2 versions of yellow. One's a little bit more mustardy looking. The other one is a brighter banana. So it's the brighter banana, if you will, that's the total special education.
I'm not seeing any questions. Oh, wait. Kelly?
Yes,
So, is this the withdrawals after October 1st, or is just any time?
anytime. I have another
Yeah,
chart.
okay, I remember seeing
Yep.
that, okay, great, okay.
Yep. If you could go to the slide that says request 1, BCD.
It might be on the other.
It's the next one, yeah, that one.
This one right here.
There it is. Oh, time of withdrawal. So this is actually exactly what she's asking about. So if you look at that, there's so few students. We have about, I put the chart as 220 because that's how many students we have from Arlington or somewhere in that range. The first batch are students who left from FY20 to FY25 prior to the start of the school year. So for example, Nikki said we have 59 students who accepted right now, or So most likely, we will not have 59 students because private school acceptances will come in and other things happen. Most likely we'll lose 10 or 15. So that's something that happens here. And those students are not on our October 1st report. And the next batch is the group who leaves prior to October 1st. So that means those students set foot or did not set foot into Minuteman and decided this is not for me, and they left and went somewhere else. And the October 1st to January 31st, that is during our exploratory. Most of those, it looks like, are out of area kids when people move with their families. But the last batch I put is 131 or later. So why that's an important date for Minuteman is that is when our freshman vocational choices come out. So sometimes if someone does, which I think 95% of our students get their first pick, if a student does not get their first pick and they're not interested in any of our 18 other areas, then sometimes they decide Minuteman is not for them. So that's why I broke it out in this way. Questions about the enrollment withdrawal? Yes.
Rebecca. So I was the person who asked those questions, so thank you so much for that level of detail. That was precisely what I was looking for, and that's super helpful. So when you show the overall, the graph that showed the overall number of transfers there, yes, thank you. It certainly looks like it's going down. And I find that super encouraging. If that's a real, sometimes there's fluctuations, but if that's in fact going down, I think that's really encouraging. And I just wanted to mention, I realize you guys are under a ton of pressure from the broader community to accept all the kids from Arlington who apply. So I hope that you're also balancing that with making sure that you're not inadvertently accepting kids who can't remain at Minuteman because you can't provide them with what they need. So just wanted to balance out that pressure that you're hearing.
It's funny that you say that. So there was a Board of Education meeting tonight, a Massachusetts Board of Education meeting, and the issue of a lottery has come up, which is basically take every single student, pull it out, no selective criteria, and that's a huge debate right now, particularly due to the issue of retention with these precious vocational seats. It's important that we know that students who want to come to 50% of their educational experience in a vocational program truly do want to be there. Because if they don't, this is a gigantic commitment and they won't keep that seat. We also found with acceptances that if students, our first round of acceptances is absolutely the highest number of students who commit. When we go to round 2, there are some students who will decline and say, I wasn't picked at first. So right now we did a pretty gigantic first enrollment because we want to make sure we have the kids who are interested and will benefit the most from this type of education. So there's one more slide. It's percentage of students served.
Can I ask, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Just one question on the bar chart that we were looking at with the different colors of yellow. So all the special ed bars are very, very slight. Is that a student or is that the water level of?
That's the water level, but the chart I'm showing you right now is about students specifically.
Okay, but that, I think the prior one, out of those 10 students, it looks like maybe 8 were in the special ed category. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, would you mind keeping it on the percentage of students served? Yes.
On yours.
So I know you're asking about a different slide,
Okay.
but this slide informs your question. So if you look at the navy blue, that is the percentage of special education students that Minuteman serves from Arlington. And the yellow line is the percentage of 9 through 12 special education students that Arlington High School serves. So we actually serve a significantly higher portion of special education students because our applicant pool seems to be much higher with that population. So this shows the blue line is Minuteman, the percentage of students from Arlington we serve who receive special education services, and Arlington 9 through 12, the percentage that they serve. So we feel very confident that we are supporting all types of students. Yes,
Charlie.
oh, sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. But there are more students in Arlington, more Arlington students in Arlington than there are in Minuteman.
That's why I used percentage, yes. Exactly.
But that's, doesn't that say that the Arlington High School is maybe serving more Arlington special education students than Minuteman?
In the raw number, yes,
Yes.
just like Arlington High School is larger.
Yeah.
Right, much larger than.
Larger with respect to Arlington students.
Yes, yeah.
Thank
So this is looking at our population of students from Arlington specifically.
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, something you might want to know though, Minuteman as a whole, our freshman class is about 60% of our students receive special education services from all areas. Okay, more questions about that? So if we misinterpreted the question, please feel free to ask or articulate, because we just had what we had. All right, do you mind if we go to the next one? Okay. I'm ready to.
So I'm gonna talk to request number 2, which is the per pupil, if you wanna get that other. Do you have the other PowerPoint?
Yeah.
Oh, is this the old PowerPoint?
This is the
Is that- oh.
So Mr. Tosti shared the per pupil expenses from DESI, which are FY23 per pupil expenses that were last updated May 15th, 2024. This is a common topic, the Arlington Finance Committee. Our explanation and our analysis does remain consistent with prior years. There are 3 main reasons why that is. Our teacher salary is number 1. We do have about 2/3 of our educators are very experienced veterans on the top step and top level. So when comparing to other vocational towns and our member towns, that is one of the reasons our instructor line is a bit higher. As Superintendent Driscoll alluded to, we do have a significantly high special education population. Overall, if you want to scroll down to the next, there's a little bit more detail. We have 45.5% of our students with disabilities, and 60% of the freshman students this year had disabilities as well. So we do have significantly higher special education costs than other districts. Our transportation as well, if you look at the graph here, or the map here, shows the location of our school and our member town. So what was once a 16-town school district became 9 when the new school was built. If you look at the towns that we serve, we're very stretched, right? You go as far west as Lancaster, and we do have Needham and Dover that are a bit south. So our transportation costs compared to more of a city school are a bit higher because of the location of our member towns. And that should do it for big picture summary. I'm happy to answer any specific questions on the per pupil.
Topher.
Topher, hi. So are you using disabilities and special ed interchangeably? The term?
No, special education services literally on an IEP. So do we have additional students on 504s? Yes.
Yeah, I was wondering because you say disabilities here, but then you mentioned special ed, so
Yeah, separate.
they're separate.
Michael.
How's the performance been from the new transportation vendor?
They will start on July 1st.
Okay, so close. No, I remember there were broad, widespread complaints, previous contracted providers.
Yeah, we had a kickoff meeting with them today and we're looking forward to the new collaboration with the company starting July 1st.
Any other questions?
Thank you. Are transportation costs allocated differently depending on distance per pupil?
No,
So it's flat across, if I'm in Lancaster, I pay the same amount as up from Arlington,
we don't charge for transportation.
but in the
Well,
assessment to the
within
town.
Yeah, it's within
Oh.
the assessment, yes. The routes cost different amounts, so it does cost a higher amount. But our budget and our operating budget is calculated based on the 4-year rolling average. So it is part of your assessment. We have the total transportation costs less the reimbursement from Chapter 71 or the state. And then that's allocated based on the the number of students or the percentage of the 4-year rolling average from the respective town.
Okay, thank you.
And I apologize, I misunderstood because my last district was a comprehensive school district and we would charge for transportation. That is a typical thing, so I thought you were asking about that, my apologies.
No, I was just wondering, if Lancaster pays more per pupil than Arlington. You're just saying they don't for transportation.
It's based on the 4-year rolling average of students.
It's a head count, not a mile.
It's a head count, not a mile.
Other questions?
So you have $3 million in grants, and revolving. What percentage of that is federal grants that you're worried about?
Oh, that's a great question. So that's something our school committee has been looking at already. At this point, we are prepared. That our grants are supplemental. We don't use it to, it's not funding a majority of our schools. For example, when the ESSER money fell off, many school districts were paying for full-time positions and chunks of actual operation. Minuteman didn't do that. So we feel like we're in good shape for that.
Yeah, we do have we get title grants, entitlement grants, Perkins grants, and IDEA or 240 grants, approximately $500,000 in total. And those are more of an allocation. We have applied for more competitive grants, such as the capital skills grants, but just to give you a sense of the dollar figure what we're looking at compared to our full budget. Hopefully you see.
Can I ask one more? Yeah. One more question. So I just curious about the capital stabilization, sort of how much is in there now, and what's the thinking behind, building it up. So what are you hoping, planning for?
Yep, so right now it's about $3.5 million, and we put the allocation this year towards it to build it up. And do you wanna speak to the capital plan?
I do. So right now, we have a 20-year capital plan that we're starting to implement as we learn about the issues with our brand new building that wasn't open for 1.5 years in use capacity. It's important that we maintain our building, so we don't have another issue where we're coming back to the taxpayers and asking for additional assessments for upkeep or
Roof replacement, stuff like that.
yeah, so for example, this year, our elevators, we had to get a major elevator repair that was unanticipated. We could handle that without coming, knocking on your doors.
Have you covered the questions that have been asked? Do you have more questions that have been sent to you beforehand or?
We have more questions.
Yep, so the next one will be.
Request 3. How is enrollment trending in Minuteman Technical Institute, the MTI adult programs? If you're not familiar, we have adult programs at night. We have 7 students in automotive, 11 students in electrical, 11 students in cosmetology, and there are plumbing tiers. We have 38 students, but there's different tiers of plumbing based on their hours. Right now, the Minuteman Technical Institute has their own revolving account for revenue and expenses, and it is not a for-profit venture at this time. Right now, we are funded primarily through CTI grants, Career Technical Institute grants, which is a grant in partnership with Mass Hire. So what we do is work with unemployment to help people get skills that they need to get jobs. So it's really worthwhile. It is, we would not be able to run this if it weren't for the work with Mass Hire and the CTI grant.
Questions, Annie?
So what's the eligibility criteria for enrolling in these programs, the grant-based programs? Is there any?
Oh, anyone can apply. Tell all your friends and neighbors, anyone can apply.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you're paying out-of-pocket tuition, you have to be a member town and then.
There's two different rates, yeah. But we do absolutely have them.
Other questions?
Okay. All right, request 4, did people take that one?
So there was a request to summarize the rental of the school facility by area, athletic field, theater, meeting space, restaurant, who our principal users are, the frequency, and the profit returned to the district. So this page is actually, the detail is included in our FY26 budget book, if you're looking for additional detail. We do have principal users, our FC Greater Boston Bolts, which is a club soccer team in Lesley University. They are both rent year-round, primarily our athletic fields in the fall and the spring, as well as the gym in the winter. But as you can see, there's a further breakout of the theater and other rental space within our facility. As we noted in the budget, the revenue that is created helps offset the debt, the athletic field debt that we have. And that was approximately $115,000. We also have started an annual capital reserve. So for the past 2 years, we've put $237,600 in. We will continue to build up that fund. So if the turf needs to be replaced in coming years, we will have an allocation of the revenue each year to help offset that cost and not coming back to our member towns. And I'm happy to answer any further questions about any of the details.
Anyone have questions? Charlie?
So, we can interpret this as saying that the cost of these fields are not showing up in the assessment.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I just comment that, we had a discussion here a couple of years ago about the lights, additional borrowing for the lights. And, both my granddaughters are playing tonight on the Bulls at Minuteman.
They're so cute with the little backpacks on the fence.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Okay, request 5.
Wait, I'm sorry, Josh, I have a question. So the facilities director cost, that's 20% of their salary?
Mm-hmm.
And do you have a hard time, I'm just curious if you have a hard time filling that position or if it's, we have a challenge internally in Arlington, so I'm just curious.
Well, it's interesting. So tomorrow night I'm presenting my entry findings of my, my superintendent's entry plan to the school committee. So I can't give away my thunder. Tomorrow we'll get it. If you'd like to join, please join. We currently have a director of operations who is in charge of rentals, facilities, maintenance, and all human resources and aspects of human resources. So we have a different kind of challenge that I'll be talking more about tomorrow night to the school committee.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
And also on your utility costs, those seem pretty flat. You didn't get hit with a big bump. These questions are all kind of just relative to other stuff that we've been discussing in Arlington.
So we do have that one athletic field light that's out there, and we bill to the this rental facilities rental revolving line just the cost of that one field. But we also do include in the invoice to those renting a lighting fee, so it helps us.
Your heating and cooling, pretty flat.
Yeah, we don't necessarily you know, for the athletic fields, they're outside, obviously.
Oh, I see, this is only, this slide's only,
Yeah, so that
Facilities,
line
okay.
in particular was
Okay,
just for the
right,
athletic.
thanks, sir.
Okay, request 5. That's Jelly Bean, the dog, from our new vet tech program. So the questions are, how is the vet sciences shop doing 4 years after its founding? So we have 45 students. As of January 1st, we opened a puppy daycare and grooming services that is in fact open to the public. It's not consistent every day. It's a classroom, so we open it when we can. Bless you. Is there a public-private partnership in the delivery of teaching that was anticipated? So I think there was supposed to be a partnership with an animal hospital that did not end up working out. Right now, we put out an RFI last year to explore potential partnerships. It didn't lead to any. Last spring, the program moved to 20 Mill Street, and it's a renovated building that is now our vet tech program, and our students spend their clinical hours at local veterinary hospitals. We transport them there. So instead of the vet hospital being with us, the vet hospital is all sorts of different vet hospitals, and the actual location is in one of our buildings that was being underused. Let's see, and we have the list of where, now this isn't necessarily where our students do their clinical hours because they go all over the place, but this is where we actually have students on co-op, Animal Adventures, Arlington Animal Clinic, the Banfield Pet Hospital, Callahan Vet Group, Whole Pet Veterinary Center, Posh Pup Center, the doggy daycare, and the Park Street Veterinary Clinic. Any questions about animal science or vet tech?
Just know we do have our seniors will be graduating this year. We haven't had any graduates from that program yet. This will be the first year we'll have seniors graduating from that program.
Okay. We had a question about what is the status of the East Building. So if you're not familiar with that building, it used to be rented out by a daycare during COVID that closed up. So right now, we're in discussions with some colleges. We've been approached by some colleges, some schools, some other organizations who are looking for space to expand their programs. So we're in discussions with opportunities for not only renovation, but also to have programs that will connect to our programs, so it would be mutually beneficial. And our bullet articulates that our goal is to develop a partnership program that serves both Minuteman and a potential partner. And this connects to request 7. The question is about the other properties, and as I said, we have groups that are potentially interested in all of our properties that are underused right now. The vet tech program is fully renovated that house. So the puppy daycare, I wish I brought pictures of it because it speaks volumes. But we're not renovating anything else until we have a commitment and a long-term partnership to make sure that we're not revisiting this over and over. And Nikki can explain to you about our profit loss with those.
Yeah, so as Superintendent Driscoll mentioned, Minuteman did invest in 20 Mill Street, approximately $50,000 to relocate the animal science program. This building and the expenses are now part of the FY26 budget, as it's now part of the school and a program that's part of our school. We have 2 other buildings, 10 Mill Street and 16 Mill Street. 10 Mill Street does have a beginning balance or a revolving account balance. This was the former lodging of former superintendent, so they did pay rent. We do have small expenses, for both 10 Mill Street and 16 Mill Street, such as keeping, the heat on, electric, water, so, pipes don't burst. Very minimal, expenses until, a decision is made. We had about $400 this year for 10 Mill Street, and we have covered a small deficit, on 16 Mill Street, almost $2,500, just to keep those buildings going until a set plan is made for the future.
And as a part of our 20-year capital plan, we had an organization called On-Site Insight do that work with us. They did include all of our, not just the main campus, but every single property on our entire campus.
Any questions, Michael and then Grant?
Tremendous the utilization you've made of 20 Mill Street to expand delivering services. That had been one of the many ideas talked about for 10 and 16 Mill Street, that if Minuteman were going to expand in its total enrollment, the choke point would be more, not so much more classroom chairs, but more shop space. And I like that you've got a professional group that's looking at these utilizations. In the meantime, 10 Mill Street was a habitable residence and it's vacant right now?
Yes.
That's disappointing. That's all.
Grant?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Grant Union and Precinct 5, and I'm one of the slower people in the group, so I actually have to go back to the co-op question, if that's okay. It takes me a while to kick in here, but I had some questions, but I think it's a great program, and the interns, essentially the co-op people, they work like Arlington Animal Clinic, is that one of the positions? And that's during the day?
Yes,
daytime?
yes. Not only during the day, so their hours, they have to work a minimum of 30 hours a week, which is the school week, and it can be at any time. So sometimes the hours are early, sometimes they're later. You're literally holding a position that they offer. It's not an internship, it's a paid job.
Oh, interesting. Okay, well, thanks for that. And so you've reached out to they're basically private firms. You've reached out to them, or they've reached out to you, or?
Oh, that's a great question. So earlier, actually it was a Thursday night, last week, we actually have an advisory board for every single one of our 19 programs. That includes industry partners, our vocational teachers, experts in the field. We meet twice a year so that they can advise us and connect us with more co-op employers. We also host our co-op employers a couple times a year. And these are long-standing partnerships that seem to expand. Once people hire our Minuteman students, many of them are kept on after graduation.
You're just leading right in. This is great. So the next question I have is away from the private sector, and perhaps I'm kind of selfishly thinking the town of Arlington, a lot of our vacant positions, particularly in some of the trades. And so I'm wondering if there's been any connection or reach. I know town is different than the private, but I'm wondering.
No, so we do have, I want to say it's Needham Mill. We do have some, that's right. We have students working with DPW in Needham right now. So the
Needham students, right?
No,
Okay.
they're any student from a particular program. Because if you think about it, we only have, let's say, plumbers. We have 15 plumbers per year. The only ones really eligible to work in the field would be juniors halfway through the year and seniors. And that's why so many of our students are out on co-op, because the employers want to get them connected as soon as possible. But if you have particular needs and you know you would like to connect with our programs, see if there's projects that we can do, that's what we do.
We do, and look to you.
Yeah, they actually, there was some discussion about past sort of conversations, and that we've had some Minuteman students as well in some capacity.
So
But maybe not a co-op.
Yeah, co-op is different from a project. So if we as a school say we're going, actually there'll be another slide about, is it the next slide?
two slides.
Okay. If there is a project that we're doing with students, the disadvantage is they're students and they need to be with their instructor and school comes first. So sometimes depending on students and where they are in the curriculum, it'll take a little longer. So for example, some of the work that's being done on those buildings, we had students do that, it took a little longer than if we had, hired people to do that. So that's a little bit of a challenge.
And Grant, do you have questions on this slide?
I still had my follow-up question, actually. So it was the town of Needham. Who's the connection there? The town reached out to you, or how does that?
When we were at a meeting like this, we go to Needham twice a year for, they actually call it the study. It's the Minuteman Study Committee, and that's where we make our connections. And the DPW works with our operations person and our vocational director to make that happen. But it's not quick. It's not quick, but if there are big picture projects, we're ready to talk about those.
And one more. Has town of Arlington ever reached out or attended any of these meetings? That you know of. I know you're new. I mean,
Well, this is my first meeting with Arlington, so I would not know that.
Okay.
But right now, we don't have any projects that I'm aware of connecting to the town.
All right, thank you.
Any more questions on this slide?
No co-ops in engineering, horticulture. I mean, traditionally, these have been hard to make the match with.
Mhm.
But
So we
Right.
have a future slide with all of the outside of the trades hall and the co-op businesses in a future slide, two more slides.
Can we go to request 8? Someone wanted an update on the north building, so that's the additional building that is outside of our welding program. We have our machine shop essentially and welding, and there's not enough room, and we need more room. There's a building that our students are working on with our instructors. So it's taken longer, like I just mentioned, to get this done, but it is essentially a live classroom where they're turning on the full power. I think we said heat and permanent power March 12th, which means we'll be able to work much more quickly and the weather will be great. And there's a list of the things that we're installing. If any of you ever wanted to take a tour, I am absolutely happy to take you on a tour of our buildings. So you can see our facilities and what we're doing.
Any questions on this slide, Michael?
the north building was sort of foreseen, but it was intentionally not finished. The concrete pad was poured as part of the new building project, and it was left like that. And it was thought that it would take some years, but this would be a hands-on completion for the trades kids. So it's happening.
It is.
Any other questions on this slide? All right.
Request 9. So this, we had a question about co-ops outside of the trades hall shops. So that means other than plumbing and carpentry and machining, what about those other shops? So we listed as many as we could of businesses where our students are employed. I won't read all of them, but 17 out of 19 of our programs have students on co-op. The 2 that do not are cosmetology, which you would think, oh, can't everybody just work on hair? They cannot, because they have to pass their state boards. So students do not go out on co-op until they're done with passing their state boards, but many of them have jobs lined up already. The other program that does not have students out right now is environmental science. They don't finish their drinking water licensing until January of their senior year. So those students are just starting to look for employment, but it's second half of their senior year. Many of them just want to stay with us and not leave for that. And a lot of those students are headed to 4-year colleges and universities as well. But I think we have 2 slides of all of the different, businesses.
Questions? I don't see any, so move on.
Okay, and
Roll back just a second.
So horticulture, Michael, there's 4, if you can see that, there's 4 listed there, including
We have
Mahoney's.
3 for robotics, they're all new.
Right.
Tremendous. Simpson Comforts and Hager used to be located in Arlington Center until they outgrew the site. And I guess they're in Waltham now. But they've been in Arlington Center for about 30-something years.
Okay, request 10. So I assume this question has something to do with something else that you're all looking into, so if you want to articulate that, I'm happy to answer it. Does Minuteman have a written policy on the accruals of vacation time, sick time, and other time off? Do all employees receive and acknowledge the receipt of this policy? So we don't have a school committee policy to manage sick time. But Minuteman employees that are outside of the teacher's contract, teachers don't get, teachers get 15, I think it is, sick days, but it's by their contract. They absolutely do not get vacation time because vacation time is built into the year. But employees outside of the teacher's contract do not have unlimited accrual. They may carry over 5 vacation days. That's something that's been in the works for several years, and as of June 30th this year, that is 5 days carryover, and that is it.
Questions?
I asked this one because it was left unclear a couple of superintendents ago, and it blew up.
Well, it is much less expensive now. I'm not getting popularity points, I would say, for no accrual of the vacation time, but that's where we are right now.
Any other questions?
Request 11. How many vacancies are there in the teaching faculty requiring both educational and trade certifications? We don't have any current vacancies that require educational and trade certifications. This next year, we will have typical openings due to retirements. Like a longtime cosmetology teacher, I think she's our most veteran teacher. She's retiring, and we already have people who have expressed interest in filling that spot. So that is one example where you do need a trade certification and teaching certification. Usually with vocational, teachers can start on a waiver and start their educational classes while they're actually teaching, because it's very difficult to pull people out of industries where they make lots of money and say start on teacher level 1, step 1, and you should already have all your education. So there's an organization called MAVA, Massachusetts Vocational Administrators Association. They provide the classes, and it's done through Fitchburg C. Did that answer?
Question.
Okay. And the last one, what is the status of the disagreement with the town of Lincoln concerning the cost of the building permits for the new building? So as of right now, the situation's ongoing with legal counsel. I wouldn't say it's resolved. There's things when I arrived, and I want to say it was Steve Ledoux from Concord who definitely wanted this revisited right away. There may be issues with statutes of limitations and things of that nature. And the real question is that we need to be thoughtful about is the money to pay for legal counsel worth the return, which is a very terrible position to be in. But once we pay money to someone, it's very difficult to get it back. I want to say, do you remember what month? Probably October, I think, we discussed with the school committee in an executive session the details of some recommendations of legal counsel.
All right, any other questions on this issue that the superintendent is able to answer? All right.
And that's the end of your questions you provided.
Answering those, I will now open it up in case anyone has any further additional questions that we have not covered. John and then Charlie.
Hi, yeah, my question probably could have gone back with question one, but wasn't exactly on point, and it's just generally, I think it sounded like, students from Arlington, like senior year, junior year in the mid-50s, like 57, 56 or something like that, and then freshman and sophomore year, they're in the mid-40s. I don't have the presentation in front of me, but I think it was like 40. So I'm just curious, what's that, is there a reason for that 10 student drop off? I noticed you have 55 accepted coming into freshman year next year. So any explanation for the mid-40s for the freshman and sophomore year?
Yes, they didn't apply.
Okay,
Yes, last year we accepted every single student.
got it. All right, so it's just a matter of
yeah.
applications.
Yeah.
Yep, and it sounds like maybe they're up a little bit this year.
Yeah, and 10 students really is not, if we see 30 students,
Yeah.
something's going on. If we see 10 students, it's really just individual kids and
Yeah.
interests.
And I think it possibly the new high school.
I will say,
Yeah.
historically, when a new school opens, you do see a slight dip for a few years based on the new preschool.
Got it,
Yeah.
that makes sense. Thank you.
We're not the newest.
It's
So
true.
you got a few buildings, yes. Thank you.
It's also the athletic programs too. I talk to a lot of families in Arlington, and if they've got a child that really wants to play very highly competitive soccer at Arlington,
Yep,
that's where they're gonna go.
sure, that's what it is. That makes sense.
Even if they have interests that we put them in good stead. But we're lucky to have two terrific school opportunities for our residents.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Charlie.
Thank you, thank you, Madam Chair. So you've got a pickup of about $582,000 this year because the ESCO lease dropped off.
400, is that right?
It was 550,000 last year, but we did increase the OPEB by 300,000.
But the number that, on the lease that ended was around 580,000, right?
Yes, it was
Yeah.
it was 550,000. It was allocated between all the 16 member towns, so the amount that was assessed to our 9 member towns was closer to 425,000. The other 7 member towns
My
made
question,
up the
my question is.
Yep.
Do you have a plan for what you're gonna use that differential for over the years going forward? And in a related sense, do you have a 5-year financial plan?
Part of the study committee was to reallocate a portion, not the full amount, to OPEB, and each year we will continue, so that will be the one-time bump, but that will kind of be our new level, and each year we'll increase the OPEB contribution by 5%. So we weren't planning on, totally utilizing all of that.
So half of it is going to OPEB and half of it is going to general expenses?
So again, the member town assessments was about 425,000. So, as you can see, we did have some capital requests. It really depends on year to year, the plan for the school. We don't necessarily have a 5-year plan at this point.
Well, I can talk about
Okay.
that. So we typically can only predict for the kids who are in the seats right now. So what you have the benefit of doing is looking at kindergarten, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We don't have that. We have the students who are in our seats, and that's what we predict our budget for. So with applications in the 9th grade, we usually project out those 3 years solidly because that's what we know we have. So when it comes to the incoming freshman class, it is a guess where we would be with those two. So for example, if we don't have enough applications and we end up with out-of-district students who are paying tuition, that would impact the whole calculation. If we have no out-of-district students, then it is all assessments. So last year, and I think Nikki mentioned this in the primary part of our presentation, we had 19 out-of-district seniors leave. We accepted all member town applications and we took in 19 freshmen from out of district, so that kept that the same. This year, it looks like we are not going to be able to have any out of district students. That would be a benefit financially with the tuition. So that's a part of what the safety net that we need when it comes to future planning.
So next year, we're gonna get a larger, higher assessment.
It's possible.
So if you look at the students from Arlington, I believe the senior class was about 56, and what we're anticipating for the freshmen is 59. So you know, it is a 4-year rolling average, so you don't see spikes every year. But you know, the past 2 years in particular, your assessment has gone down. As we discussed, your freshman and sophomore class, the students were in the 40s, not the 50s. So you know, as your assessment changed, it really is you know, strongly tied to the 4-year rolling average of the number of students that are attending Minuteman.
And we will always give you, so that 59 number, I don't think we'll end up with that many, but we are always going to give you the number that you need for safety, because we don't want to give you a lower number and then it ends up higher.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Alan?
First of all, I apologize for being late. I had to go before the selectmen on another issue. I'm assuming you've already discussed the per student cost comparison, okay? Have you discussed the lottery at all? The proposal? I have no questions.
All right, does anyone else have a question?
Did you want to share a thought about I'm sorry. Did you want to share a thought about the lottery that you want me to take back?
Personally, I think it's a terrible idea, but
Give me a call. You're speaking my language.
Carolyn?
So do I. I also agree with them.
So if you don't mind, Madam Chair, I will send you some information after my entry findings tomorrow, so that if anyone would like to write a letter on behalf of as individuals, so we get lots and lots of them.
You could even send them a template of the letter that we all prepared, and then you could make it easier for you guys to edit.
Thank you for that. All right, anything else that anyone has?
Well, I'll just ask one final question, just as most of us are on town meeting, do you have any plans to serve snacks this year?
So, you know what, I should surprise you, but I actually had Culinary Arts design different cookies with images of all of our vocational programs that they're working on. They're in rough shape right now, but the artwork's getting better, and that was the plan. Because I don't know if it was Nikki or someone already said Arlington loves the snack.
It was a special request 2 years in a row,
Yeah.
so.
it's not that we can be bribed.
3 years is a long time.
Anything you want to add before we end this session?
I just want to say thank you so much for your pre-prepared questions. They were incredibly helpful. My email address is hdriscoll@minuteman.org. I welcome you to reach out and share ideas, reach out to Sarah. And we're just really thankful we get to educate your students at Minuteman.
And I have a Minuteman email to S. Montague.
And so you are looking for us to approve 8443-856, correct?
Yes.
I will entertain a motion. Alan?
Move favorable action.
Second. Any further discussion on the Minuteman budget? Anybody want to comment on the Minuteman budget? All right, then we'll take it to a vote right now. All those in favor, raise your hand. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 in the affirmative. Any in the negative? Any abstentions? It's unanimous. Unanimous vote. All right, Thank you.
Thank you so much, nice to meet all of you.
Thank you for coming.
And we really would love to have you do a tour of the school, and if we can plan it ahead of time, I can take time out of work. We could even think about a Friday when our restaurant is open.
If we had a large enough group,
If we can,
yes, we could make it happen.
we can make it happen.
We'd like to have a big sale at town meeting.
Right, right. So for town meeting, we talked about the possibility if we give our administrative team and teachers enough free time.
Oh, yes.
Permits.
I'll be in touch with you
Soda bread,
about dates at town meeting.
Thank you, I was just gonna say that.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Have a wonderful night.
You can email me your snack requests. I will do my very best. I know some of you do have some favorites.
Any allergies?
No shellfish.
All right, let's quickly do some, thank you. Let's quickly do some minutes. Let's start with the most recent minutes, which is March. Has everyone had the opportunity to look at the minutes for March 5th, last Wednesday? Does anyone have any revisions, changes, corrections to the minutes of March 5th? All right, is there a motion to approve the minutes of March 5th? Do I have a second? All right, all those in favor of approving the minutes of March 5th, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Any opposed, abstentions? Okay, unanimous. Right, then we have the minutes of March 3rd. Does anyone have any corrections or revisions to the minutes of March 3rd? Is there a motion to,
So moved.
is there a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 15, 16. Any affirmative, any negative votes, and any abstentions? 1. All right. The minutes of March 3rd have been approved. All right, the minutes of February 26th, the open session minutes of February 26th. Has everyone had an opportunity to review those minutes? Does anyone have any corrections to the minutes of the open session of February 26th? Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor of approving the minutes of the open meeting of February 26th, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. All right, keep your hands up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. In the affirmative, any negative votes? Any abstentions? 2 abstentions. All right, so the minutes of the open session of February 26th are approved. The abstentions was Chuck and Rebecca. And the executive session minutes, has everyone had an opportunity to look at those? Any corrections or revisions to those minutes? Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of February 22nd, the executive session?
So moved.
Is there a second? All right. All in favor, raise your hand. 12, 13, 15, 16. Any negative votes? Any abstentions? Rebecca? Those minutes have been approved. All right, so let's go to facilities.
Great. Can we pull up the, like Excel thing first before the comments?
Go upstairs.
No, not that one, the Excel,
Building maintenance?
it's like 3 years of extra spending.
We talked about facilities.
Oh, no, we do for the facilities first, sorry, we're doing facilities, oh, never mind, I'm sorry, I'm so confused.
No, you're good.
Okay, facilities, yes,
So we start
Yes,
facility
we just need
budget
to,
and then we table it.
approve, yes.
Right. So, if you could, scroll down to where the budget is. Here. Perfect. So, there was a question before, about what the, total offset, or basically what the offset should be, which will affect the total taxation amount. The offsets, listed in this section originally didn't match the ones below, on the salary sheet. You can, scroll down. So where it says under new pay for fiscal year 26, that 113,700 number, that's incorrect. The correct number is the one that's listed above. So if you could scroll back up to the salary. And Alan, as you correctly pointed out, that number is the director of the facilities salary plus the administrative assistant divided by 2. So we sent that out shortly after the meeting. We did this a few weeks ago. Alex McGee did confirm that that is indeed correct. So the total taxation amount, I'd make a motion to approve the facilities budget for total taxation total of $1,293,157.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further questions on the facilities budget?
Excellent. Just one quick kind of a clarification. I asked about the utilities and the electricity, and I think you guys had said that you thought maybe it related to all the schools, and in the back of my head, I'm like, that's like the bargain of a lifetime, if that covers all the schools. So I did look at the schools budget, and there's like utilities and electricity in the school budget, like upwards to $1 million or so. So just by process of elimination, I'm thinking that this probably relates to like town hall and, you know, whatever buildings are left, but I don't think I'm pretty certain it doesn't cover all the schools.
The new high school is definitely in their budget, they've talked about it, or maybe they're just managing the
Energy and
budget,
electricity?
maybe they're managing the budget. Yeah, that's a good,
What, Josh, what did you say?
Well, I'm
you know,
like 95% certain that the utilities are within the school budget.
Within the school
Yeah, I think
Okay,
they, I
okay.
look at it
so
quickly.
they talked about it,
It's about $1
it's
million
because they're sort of that kind of, okay, Yeah.
So just a clarification.
that's a good, thank you.
I was just gonna say there's a number of town buildings, so it's not.
Yeah, like I'm thinking like what's left here, it's gonna be maybe like a town hall. No, well, the police has its own, I think I sent you guys a list, like police has its budget, fire department has its budget, DPW has its budget. So what's left? Probably a town hall maybe, maybe some of those
Somehow
houses.
the senior center, 23 Maple was on it, but then it's not, Parmenter, not the Robbins Library, but the carriage house behind it, I know it's
Yeah.
included.
Jarvis House.
Which,
Library.
Jarvis has paid, this is not a complete list, but these are the ones that we talked
and
about.
that kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
That seems
Also
like
part
about
of
the right
the-
number for those buildings
Part
that
of
are
the
just listed.
DPW, but not all of it, as of today.
Got it. Okay, I just wanted to point that out. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, John. Any other questions on the facilities budget?
So I just wanted to add one more thing about, Josh followed up with me about the question about batteries. So Talia has talked extensively with the folks in Lexington. So there has been some discussion. One of the key differences between Lexington and us is that Lexington owns their solar arrays, and we do not. And that's made it harder to come up with a battery solution. So she's very interested in it, she's following up with it, but the reason it's not quite as easy for Arlington as it is for Lexington is that we don't own the solar arrays. If we, to own them, we'd have to spend a bunch of money in the capital, we don't have a lot of money in the capital, so we have decided not to do that.
Any other questions on the facilities budget? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Unanimous. All right, take it away, Jennifer and Jordan.
Okay, so DPW, so that's when I want to get the Excel sheet with the 3 years setting. So I have a big picture discussion of DPW, especially for people who are new. A couple of questions that were general, some of which we can answer, for everybody's not trained, and then we'll get into the budgets. And then I just want to say one more thing, sort of the big picture. We have sort of a detailed response to a lot of the questions, which we're still finessing, but we will send it to you in a week or something, just so that you can, we hope we've answered, we will, of course, of this, answer all the questions we were given, but we also have written things so people can go back to it. So big picture, one of the things that people should know about the DPW is that it's maybe the only budget where things can be moved around. So if natural resources doesn't spend all their money, and we need money in engineering, Mike Rademacher can take the money from natural resources and put it into engineering. So he has that ability. That's not true about I think any other budget. So, and the other thing about this extra spending is it hasn't traditionally been reflected in the actuals that are in our budget book. And the reason for that is they wanted to give numbers for the actual that weren't confusing. So if they spend extra money on a line item because they have money from somewhere else, it's not always put in the actuals, because then it would make it seem like, oh, there's a reason those actuals are really high and we should ask why they're going down. And that's not really what's going on. What's really going on is they have extra money and they put that extra money towards a thoughtful project in town. So finding that out, what we've done in the last few years is ask them to list the projects that they spent the extra money on. You know, if you look at, I get the actual reports from Muni, we can find exactly what line they're on, but it sort of doesn't matter. What we want to know is what's not in this actual budget report that we're actually spending extra money on, and that gives that.
When you say extra money,
Yeah,
you mean that then there is no extra money.
there's no, so they don't return any money for cash, right? So if they don't fill a position, for example, that's a large source of extra money, they'll say, oh, Russell's Common Lot needs to be repaved, and we're gonna put the money towards that. Yeah. So the list that they gave me last year, it turned out some of them didn't end up getting used, and so there's some crossouts there. And then you see the next money. Just to sort of point one thing out, they did put some extra money into the facilities building. Remember, we asked Mike about this. They paid extra money to our owner's project manager who had to spend extra time. So some of the money, the extra money at DPW was used as part of that building project, not to pay the contractor, but to pay other people that, I think it was just the owner's project manager connected with that. So, so see what that is. So Russell, a lot of improvements I know are one of the things that they want to work on. So that's take a little bits of money, get put into the Russell part if you can. So this year you see, so this is FY 2024. We don't have FY 2025 fully yet because he doesn't really know how much money he'll have left, and then quickly in the summer there'll be like a bunch of projects. One of the things I'm really excited about is this sidewalk shading. I don't know if you've been in other towns, like for years I've been walking around Cambridge going, this is so cool that they don't have to redo every sidewalk because they just shave off the top of it. And a couple of years ago, Arlington started doing it. And so there's all these places where, yes, it'd be great to redo that entire subject, but we don't have the whole money. So shaving off that top means it's a lot safer to walk. So that's one of my things I'm really excited about. Okay, any questions with this list before we move on to anything else?
Annie?
Okay, so wanna ask about this not being able to move and being able to move money.
Yeah.
payment. Within the police budget, they can overspend a line item and underspend a line
Yeah.
item. The DPW budget may be divided into all of these departments.
Yeah.
But they can do the same thing.
That's basically
It's
what's
not that
happening.
they can move, that they're the only department that can move money.
Right.
It's that we see their department as subdivided.
And they
in
don't as
fact,
much, yes.
Well, they don't have to.
They don't have to,
because
yes,
it's one
that's right.
departmental budget, and so it's not different than all the other departmental budgets. I just wanna clarify.
Okay, that is accurate.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then,
And that clarifies to us too, when we're looking at actuals, that we
yeah,
don't make a big deal that something was not spent here last year, but was spent more over there.
right.
It's because of,
In terms of the actuals, presumably the actuals are rolled up from particular account lines in the accounting package. And things
These
have to
actuals-
be accounted for.
No, so we don't, the actuals that are in Munis don't show up in our budget book.
What shows up in our budget book that's the actuals?
It's the actuals that they spent on that line item, but if they spent extra money on sidewalk repair because they, like shaving, that doesn't show up here.
Sidewalk repair is not a line item?
It is in Munis, it does not show up here, and they made a choice to do it that way so that we wouldn't be confused and say, hey, why is, like, this item was so expensive last year, why is it not, our budget not reflect that? That was their explanation, when I started this budget, I found out, I looked at the Munis, I looked at these numbers, they did not match, and I asked what was going on. And that was the answer I was given, is that it's a question, they weren't trying to hide information, but it's
No, I
like
get that
less
they're not trying to
confusing
hide
to not put the
information.
information in the actuals in the budget book.
I think that if we give the DPW X millions of dollars of budget, and they spend X millions of dollars of budget, we should know where it went.
That's
we
what,
do.
that's what we've asked.
what we do.
Okay.
That's why we've asked for these reports, because it's not in the
Okay.
budget book. So the extra
Alright.
reports gives the fuller picture.
That is their role.
It was a surprise to me that it wasn't in the budget book. And the answer was, what is this money being spent on? And the best way to get that information to you was to get a list of this extra thing.
Well, I'm not happy with that as an answer, but I'll talk to Alex about that.
Questions on this? Charlie?
So are there big favorable balances in the budget book in DPW?
So I think if you add up everything on the actuals, you won't get their spending, because you won't. So yeah, it looks like they understand.
Well, you could just look at the bottom line.
Right.
I mean, so the bottom line of the actuals favorable?
Yeah, because mostly it's personnel who just never spend the budget balance.
So in the 2024 budget, the DPW department, there's, I'm confused as to where the 678,000 is in our budget book.
So, yeah, so if you look at, I don't know, natural resources, right? So we have this budget amount that assumes that we're fully staffed, but of course we never are fully staffed. So when you look at the actuals, those numbers are less than they were budgeted for originally. You don't see, in this book, we don't see budget versus actual for like 2023. We can't see that as easily, but yes, if you added up all these numbers, they would be less than what it was budgeted for. And that's because we have extra money being found in the budgets.
Clarification. Do you have anything more, Charlie?
No, thank you.
Sophie?
Did you say, so they never send anything to free cash? Is that
Right.
what you said?
Yes. they never-
Anything?
No.
Yep, nope.
Well, snow and ice?
What?
Snow and ice?
Snow and ice, is it sent to free cash? I'm not sure.
No, I think,
I don't think so. They've been actually meeting their snow and ice budget recently.
yeah, and we'll get more into the snow and ice discussion, I think in previous years, when you look at the actuals, I think in a previous year, they may have overspent a little bit, but it wasn't like deficit spending where you would go to town meeting and then you would make up the difference. I think he moved money from a line to make it up to help balance. So the actuals that you would see in and again, we can discuss this more when we get to snow and ice, but it's either 2013 or 2023 or 2024, you'll see when we show the budget that it was actually a little bit over the budgeted amount.
Yeah, there's not extra in snow and ice. That's because we don't really under budget, but we're very conservative for reasons we'll talk about.
So we won't always.
Yeah, so they don't send money
Process,
back to free cash. They use extra money in their budget for projects that are valuable to the town.
John?
So I can kind of understand that they move money around, like I just added up the numbers, it looks like they have roughly, if you combine all the departments, about almost, I think a $5 million budget, 4.9 or so. So that's their budget to take care of all these things, and they don't get into the details, they just think big picture. But I mean, I don't understand how you could spend exactly that amount of money. Like, are they keeping a reserve, that's an issue. Like, I would think there has to be at least some $10,000 that they don't spend.
There might be, I don't, when I say don't send money back to free cash, I'm saying they're not spending
They're not carrying their own reserve from year to year.
But remember, a lot of these, end of June, we got May and June, that's warm enough to do a lot of these little projects, right? So if you have some extra money and you have a whole bunch of backlog of little projects that need to get done, you can do that.
And if I could expand too, on that question, so, a lot of it is, keeping it, they try to hire all these positions, if you go to HR throughout the year, you can kind of see, that they're almost constantly trying to fill various positions across all the different divisions. So, with the majority of this work occurring in the springtime and almost into summertime, that's when he takes a look and says, oh, I haven't spent this much money, so I'm gonna transfer that money and we're gonna use it on something else. So it's trying to make it as efficient as he can. Mike is very adamant in the 3 years that we've done this budget that he's not filling positions so that he can have extra money left over, right? His intention is always to fill these positions, but when they're not filled, that's how he uses the extra funds.
I totally understand the line to line item, but the year to year item, I think would be an issue, but it doesn't sound like there is a year, in other words, they don't spend the 4.9 million this year, they spend 4.5 million, say they spend 4.5 this year. They don't carry that 400K to next year.
They can't carry it to next year, it has to be at the expense at the end, or
So there's gotta be
it's encumbered at the end of the year, this year. But again, there's those spring projects, that's what happens.
Got it.
Chuck?
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah.
So I think it's a little strange that they're not reporting actuals on the line item.
I did too.
So if there's any way we can encourage them to report actuals so we get a sense of what we're spending the money on?
Well, so when I discovered this issue, we had a discussion about what would be most conspicuous to the finance committee. There is an argument to be made that it would be less conspicuous to put the, actuals in what looks like random items and make it look like there was a big surge in spending in something. And then we have all these questions of why did that surge go away? Why did we spend it this year, not next year?
A little
That was
footnote
sort of-
would suffice, but I think we should offer the full transparency, and that's my thing. And then on the liquidity of spending across the boundaries, that's fine, I mean, as long as everything zeroes out. But on the snow and ice, if they spend 200 grand less on snow and ice, do they have the ability to spend 200 grand more on sidewalk shading? So snow and ice is included in that liquidity of funds.
Yeah, but we'll talk about snow and ice. They don't, the budget is very conservative for reasons that we'll get into.
Any other questions, Chuck? Sophie?
Right, I think I'm just agreeing here, but the issue that calls out to me is sometimes we wanna encourage spending in an area because it makes sense fiscally, for example, we always say we don't put enough towards the streets and fixing the streets for the potholes and the condition of the streets on our 10-year plan or 50-year plan or whatever it is. If we knew they weren't spending money, maybe we would say that's where it should fiscally make more sense. Or I don't know, I think it limits us.
I mean, it is at Mike's discretion. I assume the town manager is involved in this as well. But we're not
Right, okay.
you know.
And I will say that whenever we've asked this about them, it's kind of a conversation between the DPW director and the comptroller's office. It is, you can kind of see the adjustments that are made in Munis, but there's not a great way in Munis to show, you know, you can see where money's been taken from salaries. It's tough to then follow that funds and see where it went. And I think, to their credit, this spreadsheet that they've developed for us is probably the clearest way without looking at, you know, 6 pages of additions and subtractions from each different line item.
Yeah, I mean, actually, we sort of created this, if anybody wanted to know exactly what line it is in Munis, I can get that for you. But,
I think my point is without micromanaging, there are fiscal positions that we take about areas, whether it's cybersecurity, where like more money, and we encourage a department to spend more towards something. And I think we're limited if we don't know how much money they have extra at the end of the year that they could be spending towards something else.
right, and we don't know that, so these reports are 2024, right? We don't actually know until now-ish, probably, right? How much money is in 2025.
Annie and then Charlie.
So here's what would help me. So if you take 2024 and you create a spreadsheet where you're listing according to each of their subdivisions, what their actual spending was, and then you add the projects, and then you compare that to the budget, that would help me understand what's going on here without feeling uncomfortable about it. Okay, I don't care about the money shift, and I don't care about
You wanna know where it
matching
comes
exact
from.
line items. I just wanna know what is the bottom line, what they spent in 2024, because they're asking us for money in 25 and 26 that adds up to something similar to that. I mean, do you get where I'm going? I
I'm
wanna
not
know
sure
what
about the
the
last
total,
part,
I wanna know the total spending that DPW made in the year when we have actuals in 2024. I want that lined out somewhere, not in detail, the divisions and then the projects, or something like that, and then a bottom line. That we can then compare to what we budgeted or what we're about to budget. Am I making sense?
Partly I understand, certainly, the Munis things that we get from the town, has what we spend in each of the categories, right?
I'm asking you guys, as a team, to construct your own spreadsheet that shows this.
I actually did construct this spreadsheet, because I was thinking that was less useful, but.
But it doesn't tell me.
Doesn't tell you where it's coming from.
Well, no, it's not that it doesn't tell me where it's coming from, it doesn't show me their actual spending in their actual departments, in their line items was X, 80% of the budget or whatever, and then they took that other 20% and here's what they spent it on, and here's what the actual bottom line of their actual spending was, that I can then compare to what we budgeted in that year.
Okay.
Because you're telling me they're spending all their money.
Yeah.
Well, then I wanna see an accounting of that.
Yeah, okay.
That's all. I just wanna see
There's utility to, especially for next year. Having a discussion about how things are being reported and then what our preference is. But right now, we have budgets we need to cover. Yeah, Charlie had his hand up.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So I think we're confused, because the spreadsheet that you have presented with various quote-unquote projects. They're projects. But what we have in our budget book are not projects. They are activity allocations. To a large part. So I don't understand how we're supposed to, in other words, those projects spend, they fall into these different categories. And so there shouldn't, if they're actually spending to the full budget, there shouldn't be a difference. It may show up in different places.
No, I mean, the difference is usually that they have had a hard time filling all the positions. And so oftentimes there's remaining money, and they don't wanna cut that budget, right, they wanna fill those
But
positions.
Jennifer, it should show up, let's just say they didn't fill 10 positions, but they spent it on, contracted services. Then the contracted services number should be greater than in,
Right, it's not in this budget book, and they made the town manager made a deliberate choice years ago. It's never been in this budget book. It has never been in this budget book, and I discovered it 3 years ago, and they made a choice about how to present information to the finance committee that they thought was helpful.
a different question is, these projects are the projects that they quote unquote extra projects that. So why don't we see a list of the projects that they spend all the normal money on? I mean, there's things that people are doing. And it's not apples and apples. We're having a discussion about two different things. It's my observation.
Okay.
After we get through salaries, then you're telling us they spend money on functions. But then we know that there are also projects. And it's a different way of looking at.
I mean, sometimes it depends on what it is, right? So sometimes it might be the same company that they're.
All year long, there's.
Be quiet, hey, quiet. Jennifer, I didn't hear you.
Oh, so it depends on what it is. It depends on what item they're talking about. In some cases, they're doing sidewalk work with the exact same company that they're doing sidewalk work as part of the capital budget. Because remember, a lot of things they do are part of the capital budget, actually, not part of this budget. In other cases, they're extra, they're hiring somebody new. So it really does depend. As we go through this, we're gonna talk about each of the line items and talk about what the money's being spent for, right? So is it a materials, is it contracted work, et cetera. But I do wanna point out that there is a lot of spending in the capital budget that DPW is managing as well. So we're not seeing, with these budgets, we are not seeing everything that DPW does.
So the question I have is, with the work that you two and Paul have done, knowing what these, and these are not, this is FY 23, right?
24 is how we, is as close as we
So
can,
knowing the information you got from that,
Yeah.
can you proceed to present budgets and answer to this question?
Yes,
On how,
yes.
on what is being budgeted and why, and any anomalies and that might have happened in that budget that you're aware of?
Yes and no. Last year I did say, oh, this budget had this and that, I have some of that. I didn't do that as much this year because last year it didn't seem to be as important. So,
Well,
what to say. But I will, let me go through and particular questions, we can go through them. So I'm gonna talk a little bit more about general stuff, and then I do natural resources, and then Paul is on Zoom. We might just skip over his budgets and see.
Yeah, I don't think
because
we
we won't
can
get to
present
anything.
today.
Yeah, we won't
but-
get to everything anyway. Okay, okay, so, big picture stuff, Department of Public Works is 7 divisions. One of those divisions is water and sewer, which is not in this budget. But it is a division. Staff of around 80 people. Biggest stress for them continues to be vacancies. Last year, we had a lot of conversation about losing staff to other municipalities, and there was a concern that our town manager 12 Commonwealth communities aren't necessarily the communities that we were competing with, right? Because, for example, Lexington is not in the town manager 12, but Lexington is right next door. If they're paying more, or Cambridge is paying more, we might be losing candidates to that. This year, the story seems to be that we're not necessarily losing people to other towns. We are losing people purely to private industries. And we are, in many cases, not even getting applications. A recession would help, and we might get that. So really, it has just been a really good building boom. About certain things like HVAC are just in tremendous demand in the private sector, and we've had trouble hiring people.
And off of that, just remember ARPA funds, that's working in municipal government, we saw a lot of people go into the private sector because there's a lot of money to be made.
Yes,
On
ARPA
that
funds,
point,
yeah.
DPW facilities, a lot of that is where the money's being spent. So the deadline to spend all ARPA, December 31st, 2026. I think it'll be interesting to see what happens in hiring after that happens when there's not as much money to be going around to private contracting.
Very exciting, we just hired a new assistant director to help Mike. We had lost our previous person, James Mallory, seemed great and competent, we told him to give him cookies or keep him, anything to keep him sit here, he seemed good. And then the other big picture thing I wanna say, I know that every year there's a question about whether we are pursuing a vehicle maintenance program. And we are not there yet, we are closer than we've ever been. They do have a top candidate in mind. And the intention is to take the motor vehicle, new motor vehicle person and task that person with choosing and implementing a program. The barrier so far has been, the reason why we haven't just thrown something out there, Mike wants to be sure that the program that we choose is something that people in the field feel comfortable with. Because you have to have all these 80 people entering data, and they're, you know, if they feel like that's a waste of time, if they feel like that's not getting them anything, you know, that's been sort of Mike's thoughtful, besides being overwhelmed about other things, he's also been very thoughtful about making sure there's buy-in. You can't just throw something without buy-in. This year, there's been, we're gonna talk more about this, but we're sort of trialing a program that's affecting 9 vehicles and for tracking them with GPS. And that we think can lead to a vehicle maintenance program. And so the hope is we're taking baby steps in that direction, you know, with the rollout, institutional rollout, and trying to get more buy-in, that there's a thought that next year we'll come back and say, we've done it finally.
Yeah, and we'll talk about it more when we get to the motor vehicles repair, because I think that's where most of this is going to be going on. But I know it's been this committee's position for many years to try to, you know, finally have like that vehicle maintenance program in a way that's going to see cost savings and efficiencies to the town. And like Jennifer said, the good news is it's on the horizon.
It's on the horizon, and it hasn't ever really been before, but it's been something Finance Committee has been very interested in. So I got some general questions about water meter replacement. I think we've talked about that with various people in town. The answer is there's legal terms getting involved at this point. Charlie had some questions about overflow, but I said I think this is and Mike Ryder thinks that this is a town manager conversation. And then I had a big picture question. Our overtime average is based on something we did 5 years ago. It was a rolling average. It was an average of 10 years ago. We had some conversation about it last year, but this year Mike said by next year he'll update it because the numbers are not really accurate right now. Okay, so then leading into natural resources. Division maintains 30 parks, 26 playgrounds, 19 athletic fields, public lands, and 21 traffic islands. We are in the vacancies continue to be a problem here. We're in the process of making an offer to another equipment operator. But the positions that remain unfilled, and they've been unfilled for years, if they're moving around, but we always have vacancies, are tree climbers. And I tell this story, like a few years back, I noticed that there was a tree limb right as you stepped off the bike near me, and I was like, hit you in the face. And I put this request in, and I got this response saying, yeah, that's gonna take months. So they're not doing that anymore. What they are doing now when they have too big of a backlog is that they're contracting this out to private work. Yeah, we just cannot hire the department positions that we need in town. We haven't been able to for years. Yeah, so salary increases and mostly step increases, and I'll go through overtime. We had a question about whether overtime is driven by vacancies, and the answer is no. overtime's not driven by vacancies. What vacancies do is it impacts production, so you can't get through that request list as quickly, and we have to go to an outside. And what he's now doing is that if there's more than 2 weeks of work, the old stuff gets put to an outside contractor. If that's new. R&M contracted services. This covers contracted tree services and mowing and landscaping services. And so this is where that extra tree work gets done, but also your local park that gets mowed or whatever is also this in this category. Tree planting. So we have sort of a capacity to plant about 300 to 350 trees a year. That's our goal. Last year we planted 320. The tree committee is interested in planting more, but the only way to do that is to hire an outside contractor, which is, it sort of bugs Mike that it's so it's so much more expensive to do that. And so what they've decided to do this year is to contract out for a very small number of trees that are planted on private areas. So I don't know if you've seen this, but if you want a tree on your private area, there is money, not in the town budget, but in this thing called the Trees Please Fund, to plant a tree on your private land. The Trees Please Fund is money that comes from private donations, but it also comes from the new regulations that town meeting has passed over the past few years, that if a builder needs to tear down a tree, that they have to either replace trees with a certain perimeter, or they have to pay money into this fund. So the fund is quite healthy. It's over $100,000 right now, 150,000. And so they're looking for ways to spend that money. Okay, so tree pest management, we got a question about whether climate change would result in us having to spend more money. This is, we are not gonna spend more money in this budget category because any extra money will come from the Trees Please Fund. And the idea is, so we spend $30,000 every year, and this Trees Please spend another $30,000. And the reason they do that, and this is tree committee and we have a tree warden, right? Combination of those two groups. The reason they do that is that it's better to preserve a tree, not lose it. That's an old tree environmentally than to just plant a new tree.
Could you say that again? It's called the Trees Please.
Please. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it used to only be private donations, and now since we've passed a bunch of things at town meeting, you know, that money that a builder is required to pay is on there. So that is to treat the emerald ash borer. That's what they're doing with that money. Material supplies, that's there's an increase of $20,000 for material supplies in this budget. We are not actually buying more here. This is to cover cost escalations. So it covers playground stands, wood chip, playing court supplies, fence repairs, loom, irrigation supplies, field paint, infield mix, stuff like that. Holiday lights. I had a question about whether the Chamber of Commerce resumed contributing to holiday lights. They used to split the cost, and the answer is they have not. But it's still only part of the money is going to be spent from this budget, and the rest will be spent from Parking Benefits District. Historic sculpture maintenance is used to restore the Uncle Sam sculpture, the Town Hall flag base, the Menard Hunter, and plaques. Many of these items need yearly maintenance. They need to be waxed, they need to be cleaned, and that sort of has to be done yearly. Small equipment is used to purchase hand tools, rakes, etc. Any questions before I go on to the town fields?
So it's there, are you making a motion?
Oh, yes, I will make a motion. I should make a motion, so. Actually, the maintenance of town fields is part of this, or is it separate?
Separate.
Oh, separate, okay. It is, Yes, I make a motion, for $1,917,662.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any questions or discussion on the Natural Resources Division budget? All right, all in favor of the Natural Resources Division budget, say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Unanimous.
Okay, maintenance of town fields, this would serve as sore point. Many years ago, there was an agreement with, between DPW and Parks and Rec, to split the cost of maintenance of town fields. And, in recent years, they haven't split the cost, DPW has been picking up more of this cost. And that is because, Park and Rec is spending extra money on things like porta potties, that they were not originally spending money on. So Park and Rec, because they need to spend some of their fee money on porta potties, doesn't have as much money to put into this category. So, DPW can pick up more. That's it, let's see, I think that's it for questions.
Well, reminder, we did increase the budget for fiscal year 25 and fiscal year 26. The DPW director is very confident that that 90,000 is going to work for.
Yeah, so last year, last year the money was in the wrong place, but it was eventually put into the right place. And they've increased it last year, so that should be there right now.
Are you making a motion?
Yes, the motion is for 90,000.
Is there a second? Is there a second?
Second.
All right, Sophie.
Do you know who decides, is it Parks and Rec or DPW that goes around and decides when to close fields because of the weather for soccer and baseball?
Yeah. That is not, DPW doesn't do that, that's sort of.
Yeah, Parks and Rec.
And I guess maybe a rhetorical, but those decisions affect the condition of the fields and how much maintenance needs to be put on into those fields.
Yeah, that's why they're pretty hard line about it.
But they don't on the weekends. They leave it up to the users.
But they
Yeah, but
used to be the case.
Well, yeah,
I mean, there's
in those fields, it's up to the users. So like, depending on your sport, they'll play. Like torrential rain, they will play soccer. Well, that's
DPW is not managing that.
It's not.
No, they don't.
so that's not part of the management. And we
No,
So
we just pay to,
I'll go back to Natasha and get an answer.
yeah, we just pay to mow it and stuff.
since it's
Not we, but we DPW does.
Yeah, Parks and Rec makes those decisions.
They close them out.
John.
Just confirming, and I feel like this came up last year, there's no incoming revenue to DPW, right? That all goes to the Parks and Recreation? Because I feel like that might have been even one more
So-
conversation we had last year.
Incoming revenue, so the maintenance of town field is still partially paid by Park and Rec.
Yep, so
It's just paid, it's just the DPW is covering more of that expenses.
Yep, so another,
They're not giving them money, but they're partially paying the bills.
as we mentioned earlier, like roughly, DPW roughly all in about 4.9 million, maybe a little bit more with cemeteries and then add cemeteries. But if there's not more on top of that related to incoming revenue from the parks.
So Park and Rec is paying about $35,000 a year, that's not in this budget, so that would be additional money being spent on.
But how about like when the soccer league comes and writes a check?
So Park and Rec gets the fees.
They get the fees, and
From those
yeah,
fees,
DPW
they
is not
pay.
collecting fees.
That was my
Right,
question.
but if you wanna say, oh, what are, all the money that's being spent on everything, yeah, you'd have to add about 35,000 that's being contributed to
The
the
transfer from
Yeah,
parks and Rec, which makes sense, yeah. And I know there's some other offsets too in engineering. Engineering seems to have a very sizable offset, but we'll get to that.
Alan.
Thank you.
Just information back a long time ago, in the maintenance of fields, we'd have the full amount and then offset from Park and Rec. It had to go into the Park and Rec enterprise fund budget. That just got too messy, so all of a sudden, but
got it.
But that made it more clear exactly what it was.
Exactly what, yeah, that was the frustration was there, it felt like there was a handshake agreement that Park and Rec would pick up half of it. It wasn't formalized, but when they started putting in porta potties.
It used to be formalized as an offset, which we have to match the Park and Rec enterprise number.
Got it, yeah.
Any other questions on fields? All right, so there's a motion, it's from Alan, yeah.
Okay, so it's 90,000 appropriated by the town, 35, additional 35 comes in from Parks and Rec.
Exactly.
That came from fees.
Yes.
So it's 125 total.
Yeah, but we're voting on the 90.
Any further questions? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Unanimous.
Okay.
Do admin next?
Yeah, so we're gonna skip engineering because that is, that's Paul, and so hopefully he'll be with us on Wednesday. Yes, we can do admin right now. Okay, so Public Works Administration is, not in great shape. Lots of vacancies. As we had vacancies in the junior civil engineering position, assistant town engineer, principal account clerk bookkeeping. Actually, this, I do know that the sort of extra funds that are in Munis are put in a line item in the extra funds that were given to the owner's project manager for the facilities building are in a line item in the Public Works Administration. So that is something I know, it's like 250,000. So we are actively searching for the junior civil engineering position and the assistant town engineer. This is the place where we start talking about ARPA money.
I'm sorry, are we on
Yeah, I
public
think those
ad
appear,
or
the engineers
engineering?
appear under engineering. Public Works admin,
I'm
doesn't
sorry.
cover the engineering.
Oh, okay, so my notes are wrong then.
But it does cover,
Okay.
the principal accountant and we filled the,
This is right in my-
assistant DPW
Give notes
position.
early, okay. Concern engineering, thank you. Okay, okay, so the principal account bookkeeping, someone asked if it was necessary, because it was vacant last year, it's vacant this year. The position was actually filled for a short period, and then the employee resigned. So there's a feeling that this is a necessary position, the current workload is overly burdensome, and would love to have somebody who are actively searching. Okay. We had a question about the GIS director. This is a position that's in the DPW budget, but it's a position, the GIS position covers things for the entire town, including the schools. Mike wanted his own person, he was told no. So it supports the school system, asset management stuff, enrollment issues, zoning issues, parking studies. So anything involved, sewer projects, or anything that involves sort of surveying things, the GIS director is involved in. We got a question about out-of-grade pay. This is in FY23. There's, I think this actually might have been our question though. We were transitioning from our longstanding DPW assistant director. We had some staff filling in for the positions. So you probably know from your budgets, out-of-grade pay means that usually that there is a vacancy someplace and we need to take somebody else and sort of throw them in that new position. And because they're getting a whole bunch of new responsibilities, we have to give them extra money for that. So that happened in FY23. We had a question with the cleaning allowance, 905, and it's a contractual amount for dry cleaning for the administrative staff, negotiated. Okay, so this is right. So this is, I had a question. This is where it was clear that the Munis actuals were much higher than the budgeted amount. And this is where the money for the owner's project manual was in 53,006. Munis actuals were 263,228 with an additional 163,000 encumbered, even though the actuals in this budget book is only 113,000 and change. Materials. So there is a current budget line for materials. We haven't historically spent very much. There was actually a mistake in FY24, some office supplies were spent, but the hope in this budget is to use materials for GIS aerial mapping photography. That's what they hope to spend the 10,000. That's why there's 10,000 in there. The in-state travel is actually was removed because it shifted into the auto allowance, which is where Mike feels it should have been all along. So some of these times things get moved around, they're correcting for things that just didn't make any sense. And here's one more thing. So we had a discussion about telephone expenses. So people who've done the IT budget might know that there's a desire to track telephone expenses in each department because the idea is that the IT department is going to take that over. So we want to know how much each department is spending on them. There should have been a line item here for telephone. There is in other budgets, but it got left off. So Mike is kind of checking on that. That is it. That's all I have for here.
Have a motion?
Yes, motion for 355,465.
There's a second. Discussion, questions, Topher.
Thanks, Madam Chair. So what is waste diversion and curbside enforcement do?
Yes, so actually that, I have those notes in we're not doing the waste budget yet. But, what?
It's in administration.
It is, I know it is in administration. No, I know, it's just my notes because it has to do with garbage is in there. Let me see if I can pull that up. It's a person, so the person right now has been going around to individual places to gather data and to remind people about proper recycling. That's one thing they do. Another thing they do is that they help staff all the appointments. I've seen some of you this weekend at, for example, swap shed or collect things or something like that. A third thing that this person may do is that the person may be sort of in training for Charlotte's position someday. So that's I don't know about this particular person, but before it was filled, there was some talk about that this person could potentially fill that position.
So you mentioned.
And when they did work on collecting data for the new contract. Yeah.
Okay, so data gathering.
Yeah.
Reminding people about recycling. You mentioned the swap shed. I thought that was all volunteer.
It is volunteer, but there's also staff there. So for example, Charlotte was there this weekend. Yeah.
Where's it located? Excuse me.
Oh my God, the swap shed is so much fun.
First time?
So much fun. I saw out there. Yeah, so they now have an indoor swap shed. It used to be
15 Ryder
outdoors.
Street.
Yeah, it's on Ryder Street. So it used to be that if it was raining, they had to close it, and now they don't have to anymore.
Yeah, because it used to be outside.
And it really feels like a secondhand store. It's like shelves and stuff there. It's really beautiful.
Could that be displaced by a brewing company?
No, the brewing company would be next.
Alan Jones?
Well, I was just gonna say that, but I'm expecting that the swap shed will really increase diversion. Because it's a really easy place to drop off stuff. It really should it's probably double the amount of stuff that stays out of the trash stream, which really pays well.
Especially when we have our new contract.
It's a great resource. And I think the only reason waste diversion is in here is because recycling is in here. We don't have a separate budget for recycling.
Right.
It goes in under admin.
Right. Carolyn?
Is the swap shed ever gonna go to, and everything else that's at Ryder Street, ever gonna go to the new campus of DPW?
No, there's no space. No, in fact, it's Ryder Street that's been a question about who gets to use it. And there's been a tremendous amount of demand, and as you know, it was once a private facility, and we received money for that. And when the DPW building was being done and that contract ended, then it was like, oh, well, we can use it. I think we're moving into the direction of DPW with this. So, and we're doing
Other
stuff and
questions?
stuff like that.
I have one. So the contracted services maybe confused by this, but
Yeah.
went down so much. Is that just because of the chart of accounts being read? Because it went from 100 almost 150 actuals down to 5,000.
Yeah. So contracted services, so I have, yes. That's under highway, hold on a second. Just wanna make sure.
That was the ACM line.
What? Oh, yeah, that was, no, but yeah, but those were actuals. Usually that money is not in there. I don't know why it was, this was exactly the place where they spent extra money for the owner's project manager. That kind of extra spending is usually in the budget book though. I'm not sure why, 113,000, maybe some of it was put in there.
In FY '24.
In FY '24, yeah, not the entire amount. So the muni actuals are 263,000 with an additional 163,000 covered. These numbers are 113, but that's, the extra spending is basically on the owner's project manager for the building project.
Oh.
That's the line item.
The project manager for the DPW.
That is the line item that they put that extra spending on. Because it, remember, went a year over, and so although we're fighting with the contractor on those expenses, it was clear that the owner's project manager wasn't at fault, and we had to pay them extra.
Other questions on public works? All right, there's a motion, it's been seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Unanimous. And that was, I'm sorry, for 355465.
Yeah. Okay, now we have highway, that's me too, I think, right? Yeah, big night. Okay. Okay, so we got a big picture question about whether there's a 5, 10, and 15-year plan, or 5, 10, 20-year. I think the answer is no. The plan is basically what the plan is in the capital budget. So there is long-term planning and capital budget, but I think it's this person who asked this question is probably not what they're looking for. It's not a 5-year plan, 10-year plan, 20-year plan. It's a plan in capital budget. So there were fewer vacant motor vehicle operating vacancies this year than last year. I was wondering if that's because we finally become a vehicle training facility. So one of the things, the law changed a few years back that vehicle operators had an additional licensure. And one of the problems that we had is that we'd have people who were potentially interested, but they didn't have the appropriate licensure. And so Mike thought the last couple of years that one of the solutions would be to make ourselves a training facility. So we could hire somebody without the proper licensure, and in the process of training them, can give them the licensure, and that we would attract more people. We actually haven't, until this year, had to do that. This year, we think there's one candidate who's potentially going to go through that program. So basically what Mike did is he's registered us, he set up all the legal stuff, and he was still looking for training materials, but we just found some, and he was going to do it by himself on his off time, and he never got around to it. But he found an off-the-shelf training material that we could potentially just buy if we need it. And so that is, so they haven't used it not because they weren't ready, but because they actually didn't have to, but this year they might have to. And now they have an off-the-shelf training program. So the other thing is that they continue to understand on materials and supplies due to staffing shortages. So one of the things is if you don't have enough people, you can't do things like place catch basins and get rid of old catch basins and stuff. So sometimes the spending isn't what he wants it to be because there just aren't enough people for Okay, we do have a bunch of retirements coming up, so the vacancy rate is gonna go up and down all over the place. We had a question about the 3K position for the fuel depot. This is something that was put in about 10 years ago, because there's significant regulatory and operational work required to keep our fueling station running. And since it wasn't in any one person's job description, they decided to add this extra stipend of $3,000, and that's been the exact same stipend for 10 years. Electricity, 521001. There's a question about what this is for. It is where the rider expenses live. It's also electricity for the DPW facility, which is currently being shared with facilities. It's sort of a messy arrangement. Hopefully it's all gonna be much cleaner and in all of our facilities next year. And in 2023, there was a spike in the actuals because we were just taking on more expenses as a new building. It hadn't yet been shifted to facilities. So there's a spike and now it's gone down. The actual costs are not, they're going up because we have this new building, but it's a question of where it's being shifted to. There's a question about natural gas. So although the DPW building is mostly electric, there are a couple of smaller buildings that are heated with gas. There's a garage that apparently has a big door and it's inefficient to heat it with electricity. And so it needs to be heated with gas, and there's gas-powered radiant heating on the floors there. But that money, that could still decrease as more and more things come online with electric heating. Pavement markings, used to be called highway markings. It is, it's for material, so the highway work is basically contracted out for the big projects. So long lines apparently are contracted out. So when you build a road and you have to do those really, really long lines, we don't have the equipment to do that. But, and the capital money is used for both the projects itself and then the paint itself. But there is smaller work that they do that they need to buy things for. For example, painting a crosswalk, and that's where this comes from. Let's see, the contracted services used to be called maintenance. And this, here's a place where there's extra money in FY24 that was actually spent on, in Munis, that was spent on shaving sidewalks. Here's a line item where it's spent. They were also spent here on installing an EV charger at the DPW. And apparently there's only one DPW electric vehicle charger. Who did they say has it? Somebody has to do it overnight. Oh, the tree person.
Yes.
The tree person has an electric vehicle, but since there's only one charging, Mike has to run down and charge this vehicle overnight for him, so that when he gets to work, he can use his electric vehicle. Because during the day, it's being used for some other things. So it only works right now because Mike lives in town. Has to run back and forth, there's only one. Okay, so telephone. Okay, so here's where we should have had a telephone thing in the previous budget. There's now a new telephone expenses that didn't, the 129,000 he said is a mistake, and he doesn't know what it's for. So I don't know, that's in FY23, and so I don't know what that is. But the reason we didn't have anything in the last couple of years is that it's a new item, and we're trying to track our telephone expenses so that we can give all that to IT at that point. So when that happens, so these expenses will be taken out of the DPW budget, given to IT. So we need to figure out how much that is. And let's see that. Okay. Okay, so material supplies is for curbs and catch basins. This is also based on small sidewalk and road repairs, so the big ones are on the capital budget, but if they replace, so if they replace the whole sidewalk section, it's in the capital budget, but they replace like one or two really bad squares, this would be here. They struggle to spend all this money because they don't have the staff. This is one of the places where they're not gonna spend 300 or 5,000 yet on this kind of stuff, they just don't have the staff. Vehicle fuel is for all DPW vehicles, and there's a small discrepancy between the budget book and this, but he wasn't sure what it is. It's about $10,000 discrepancy. And that is small equipment. I can't remember what small equipment is. Small equipment is.
That looking through.
Hand tools, small power tools that need to be replaced because of wear. Yeah, okay. So I recommended budget taxation total of $1,989,983.
Is there a second?
Second.
Question, Alan Jones, did you have a question?
I might have misheard, but there was a question about a 5-year plan,
Yes.
and it used to be a software package with a roadway management thing that projected out there, mostly for capital planning. Is that still being used up to date?
I don't know, what he was clear about is that there wasn't a 20-year plan. But there is, but to the extent there's planning, it happens in the capital budget. And I don't know what he's using.
Right,
Yeah,
but
right,
I
but you're
didn't
saying
want
is
to,
there software
I
that
didn't want to
involved?
leave anyone with the impression there was no planning. Unless they've stopped using that, there was a software package. It was an inventory of all the roads with, lifetimes and whatever. Now, the problem was there was never enough money to do them as fast as they
Yes.
disintegrate. So it was a losing battle, but at least it projected out and tried to prioritize the roads. So there was planning unless that's.
Yeah, no, absolutely, right, there is planning, yes.
I
And they
just
do
didn't
have a
want to leave
sense
people
of
the
what
impression that
the,
there was no
they
planning.
do have a sense of what roads are in bad shape and what roads aren't, and we are making progress on the backlog because of the override commitments, so, yeah.
Michael?
The out of grade payment line, 514003, up in the salaries, second to bottom. So that's a really significant number compared with the other departments within this budget group that we're expecting that we're gonna need to pay that much to people who are working out of grade.
Yeah, let me see if I have anything about that.
A lot of employees.
But is this out of grade work that is temporary or permanent?
I didn't ask about that, I can go back and ask.
If it's somebody that is consistently working out of grade, then they're entitled to ask for classification.
Jennifer, I think it was because there were, if you look at the a lot of the vacancies, you'll see they tend to be in like the foreman type positions or supervisory positions. So I think that was from somebody going from, an equipment operator to then working as a working foreman. So that would be the out of grade.
Somebody covers temporarily for a vacant form and then gets that increment.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's not necessarily always the same person, usually when they see the out of grade, or they would change the.
So that explains the ongoing need.
And it often happens in the summer when they hire temp staff. I remember that from an HR issue a couple of years ago.
Okay, so we have a couple of minutes left. Other questions on highway budget? Anybody have any additional questions on the highway? Bridget, Darryl?
I have less a question than a clarification. So what's here is what the plan that
Oh, great.
you've been asking about. Called pavement management. Well, this is pavement management update that was done last October. So basically they grade the condition of all our streets. And the guy to really ask these questions for on Wednesday is Joe Solomon. He's the capital committee representative to Public Works. So the challenge has always been that the way they score is in bands, and you can put a ton of money in and still stay basically within the same band that we're in. Essentially, the roads are
I mean, we're not getting better in terms of overall.
not significant.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Mike knew less about this because he doesn't check necessarily that yet.
All right, so we have a motion, it's been seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, unanimous, thank you. All right, so that will be it for tonight. Wednesday night, we'll start with capital planning. And then once we finish that, we'll go back to you and hopefully finish up the.
Yeah, great.
Yep, great. All right, thank you. We are adjourned.